Welcome to All Around Azure. I'm Frank Boucher, a Microsoft Cloud Advocate, and today with me another Microsoft Cloud Advocate, Brian Benz. How are you, Brian?
Doing good, Frank. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Very happy. It's very hot here in Canada, so probably close to you. Do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Brian Benz, Cloud Advocate. I'm based in Las Vegas. So the heat is perhaps nothing new to me. And yeah, it's getting a little warm here too. Hopefully, we have good AC down here in the desert. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. So I've been working at Microsoft for about 8 years now, and a variety of technologies. Before that, IBM and Deloitte and a few other companies. But yeah, here to talk to you today about tips and tricks for the command line.
Yeah, I was very excited when you present that idea because we'll cover tons of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts a lot of behind the scenes, how things work, but I'm really just going to hopefully share some practical tips that you can use, things you might not be aware of that are available to you in Windows, Mac, and also Linux to use the command line interacting with Azure and with your local machines and things like that.
Okay, and again, before we get into the little bit more detail and you show us, like, I think you have a few slides to show. So should we jump to your slides?
Yeah, yeah. If
But
you want
like,
to,
don't be worried, everybody. Like, it's just for a few minutes. I know Brian has a
yeah,
lot of stuff to show us today. So
yeah.
let's.
It's like an hour and a half of talk today, and I've got about 10 slides. So don't worry.
Excellent. Okay, so
It's
let
just
me.
it's mostly for me, so I can remember everything that I need to cover and show you a few things. So
Okay, so I switch now, Brian. We can see your
cool,
slide, and we are in each other corners.
great. Yeah. So one other thing, just follow me on Twitter at bbenz, um, and
It's
we'll take it from there.
yeah.
So today I'm going to cover the command line, the thing that you're for Windows users are very familiar with, which is the command line. I'm going to cover something called the Windows subsystem for Linux as well. If you're not familiar with that, I'll explain it. And then the new Microsoft Terminal, or relatively new Microsoft Terminal, I'm going to show you some cool new features with that. And also the Cloud Shell. So shell.azure.com has a ton of command line capabilities that you should know about. And then last but not least, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different command line tips and tricks you can use with VS Code as well, because VS Code actually has command line built into it as well. It's not just for code editing. You can try a few things out. So, and I'm just going to go through and, pretty casual. I've got a lot of demos I want to show of different things. I'm actually going to go into my terminal. I'm going to delete my settings, which I've had for quite some time. So hopefully that doesn't screw me up. And I'm going to create a new terminal from scratch, so you guys can ride along and watch me do this. Ask me questions along the way. So that's about
Yeah,
it.
excellent. So all along, as soon as people have question, they can put it in chat. You can read the chat. I can read the chat. Hi, Nabil is already there, and
Yep.
cool. So let's get started.
Greetings. Yeah. Okay. So when I turn my head here, it's because I'm actually looking at the chat on a different machine over here. So
Don't be worried, Brian. Like I will let you know if we have questions, but it's good that
okay.
you can see them also on your side.
Yeah. Cool. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go in here. So something that I think is cool that people don't always know, you can start a command window from from your icons or from the menu or something, or cmd.exe from the run command in Windows. But another way I like to do it, and this is the way I've been doing it forever since I learned this trick, is you just, in the File Explorer, find the directory that you want to go to in your command window. And instead of having to open the command and then doing cd documents, cd blah, 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 I can just type cmd in here, and it opens up a command window right to where I am, which is kind of cool. A few other things. Now, that's something that a lot of people already know, but here's a couple of new ones. Oh, also PowerShell. PowerShell, you can do that. And I've got some cool things. It's starting to tell me I have to update my PowerShell to PowerShell Core, which they're right. But anyway, so there's some cool things here you can do. And I'm going to show you how you can change this font a little bit too, to do some other stuff. But actually, one more thing I want to show you. WSL, so Windows Subsystem for Linux, will actually open up my default Windows Subsystem for Linux here in this location. So it's kind of cool. I didn't have to go CD, MNT, C users, I can just open up whatever I want to work with here.
Okay,
and I can start
that was fast. Let's start it again, because we have a few millisecond delay, so, Brian. So you were in the Windows Explorer. You had the folder selected.
Yeah. Correct. So right here, I just select the window. So I'm here.
Yes.
Let's say I'm in my apps 11 folder. And I want to look at some shell commands. So I go to my shell, and I can do WSL. It opens up totally new window. Now I have a couple windows open of WSL. If you see, I got a lot of clutter here now. But anyway, I go back to this one, and then I can do a list, and then I can say cat demo1 shell.
Okay, so from the Windows terminal, you type WSL. It opened Linux. So now you switch on Linux. Right?
No, it actually wasn't Windows Terminal. So that was just File Explorer.
Sorry, File Explorer.
Yeah.
And then and now WSL and open, and now you're in Linux.
Correct. So just from here, I just type WSL, and it opens me in this directory in Linux. So I can just go ahead and I can list and start doing things in my WSL that I couldn't do before. Like there's a shell script. I can do a cat on that shell script.
This is cool. Yeah, the cat is definitely not the... Oh, that's pretty cool. Like I knew the CMD, but the WSL is kind of nice.
Yes, and then there's another little trick I want to show you. If I go back to my command window here, and I type code dot, it's going to open up Visual Studio Code in the folder that I'm in now. Here's all the files I have over here. So I can play around. Here's the shell files. So that's the same shell file that I just showed you right here, shell script. So there it is. So that's kind of cool too. So I went from my File Explorer. So I go here, and I just type CMD. Okay, so I'm in here. Okay, that's great. So now I have some things I want to do. Let's say I want to go to batch files. Where was that again? It was in my commands. CD commands, and then let's say I want to edit one of these batch files.
Give me 1 second, Brian, because now I'm hiding your stuff.
Oh, I can slide it up here. Hold on. How's that? There we go.
Oh, that's better. So now we can see it.
I'm looking over here. Okay, so I know there's a delay. So there we go. Okay, so all right. So then we got the commands, and then let's say I want to edit one of those batch files. I can call Notepad from here, but I can also call code. Code dot. If you do code dot, it opens Visual Studio Code in the current directory, and it's slow because I open too many things at once here.
You keep opening stuff since the beginning, so yeah.
Yeah, so there's my batch file. So now I can just edit this batch file right from here. And if I want to run it, I can do Control Backtick. And I don't want PowerShell, I can select my default shell. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here. I didn't actually want to show this yet. But Command Prompt. And then I can delete this one. And then when I do Control Backtick next time, it opens up in my command, and then I can actually run one of these batch files if I want to. But I'm going to dig into that in a little more detail later. I just want to show you some cool things you can do from the command line straight out of Windows. And it's really handy to use that with the File Explorer. So let me see now. I'm going to have to pull this down somehow. Sort of. Look at this. Look what I did to myself here. I've got that open. All right, let's close this. Too many things open now. All right. I just want to clean this up. Otherwise, it's going to get very confusing for me and for everybody else. As we go. There's our PowerShell. And we still have a couple of... See, so now we have all these different Windows Visual Studio codes open. I don't know how to pull this one down. Huh. I know there's probably a command for that, and I can't remember what it is right now. I'm going to leave it like that. We're going to leave the cluster there. Okay, all right. So the other thing I want to show you, let's talk a little bit about what you just saw. So I showed you WSL, and I'll talk just a little bit about shipping a Linux kernel with Windows. So what you saw there is actually Ubuntu Linux. It's the same source code that you see at kernel.org. It's fully managed by Microsoft. They've done some things to optimize the file system, of course, and some other things so that you can share files between your Windows and your command line, and also your Files Explorer and other applications that are running on Windows and applications that are running on Linux. For example, let's say you have some Docker files. You can run Docker in WSL. You don't have to run it on your local machine. You don't have to run the Docker desktop on Windows. You can actually just put it in WSL and run it only there. But you can have the containers actually stored on your file system somewhere in Windows, and you can access them through WSL. So a little bit about WSL, a bit of trivia. Windows Subsystem for Linux. Why is it called Windows Subsystem for Linux? That's because the command line is actually called Windows Subsystem. It's the Windows console that everyone's familiar with. But behind the scenes, I guess the original developers called it Windows Subsystem. And then that's why the Linux version of that is called Windows Subsystem for Linux. The Windows console, the Windows Subsystem, is 30 years old. It's battle tested. It's fast. It's small. It's very efficient. One thing I learned as part of, whoops, no, skip ahead there, as part of preparing for this is it is basically one of the, now it's the only application that runs on Windows that has no dependencies.
That's
in other words, there are absolutely no dependencies on anything on the Windows subsystem. It's the baseline. For those of you who remember the olden days, maybe I'm the only one, the first version of Windows was actually called from DOS. So you would go into DOS and you would type in Windows and it would fire up Windows on top of DOS.
Oh, you know what? You beat me there.
Yeah, Windows 1.0. That's how it worked.
Yeah.
And there was only after a couple of other versions where you could actually fire it up from startup. So
I start pretty late. We're using Windows. Like I was using computers, but I was using DOS or something else. But I start using Windows with Windows 95.
Oh, okay.
That was my first Windows.
I'm going to guess this was Windows 3 or 3.1. I can't remember the version, but that's how you did it. You got a disk and you put it in the computer and you typed Windows in DOS and it would start up. So anyway, so the Windows Subsystem for Linux is a standalone application. It's the only one. However, there are a ton of applications that rely on Windows Subsystem. So anything to do with the command prompt, there are all kinds of things under the hood that if Microsoft changes them even a little bit, there is an unbelievable amount of testing that has to take place to make sure that we don't break anything in our internal applications and also partner applications. So we have to be very conservative. Microsoft has to be very, very, very conservative when they update the kernel, basically the command prompt or the console or Windows Subsystem, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
They have.
Yeah.
Hmm?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the OS, right? It's the operating system. So everything is like that's the foundation of everything. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And something you might think is just a little innocuous change ends up cascading into a huge problem. But they have actually, even despite that, managed to add a bunch of features. They've added transparency, 24-bit color, some other things. They've overhauled the whole thing, written it in C++, and made it more safe and efficient. So they have actually done a lot of changes, but there's only certain things, as far as they can go. They can't really go too far to update it to compared to other sort of more modern terminals that don't have that legacy background they have to carry with them. So that's why Windows Terminal was created. So Windows Terminal is something you can get from the Windows Store. You can create multiple tabs. It has background transparency, blur, profiles, themes. I'm going to show you all this in a bit. You connect to local and remote shells, and that's important. So basically, Windows Terminal, you go out to the Windows Store, you download it. It only runs on Windows. But the Windows Store itself, I'm sorry, the Windows Terminal itself actually acts as a front end, a window pane to the back end applications like Command Prompt, WSL, PowerShell, and other things. You can actually really customize it. In fact, I'm going to show you how you can set up a local Hugo server using a tab in your Windows Terminal in a little bit. So,
Interesting.
yeah. So and they have some pretty cool text. You can use all kinds of fonts. The main font that most people use is Cascadia Code, and they have a new one called Cascadia Code PL, and it does things like ligatures and other kinds of cool features. It has certain cool features that you don't have in other fonts. So, and it uses a lot of third-party fonts as well. But I'll show you some examples of that in a bit. So,
Brian, there's a thing that you mentioned, like before. You mentioned that WSL was Ubuntu. In your case, it was Ubuntu, but there's other distribution that you can have, right?
Oh, good question. I think it's only Ubuntu right now. It's the one that's at kernel.org. I don't think that there is another distribution of Linux that you can get through the WSL. Of course, you can install them, but I don't think through WSL you can use another distribution. I think it's only that one.
Okay,
Unless you know other.
I will let you continue. I will check that on the side because I had the impression, but maybe it's in WSL too. I had the impression we have more choices.
It's possible with WSL 2. I should tell everyone I'm only going to show you WSL 1 today because I don't actually have access to the newer build of WSL 2 yet.
Yeah.
But I will. But for the purposes of what I'm going to show today, which is basically tips and tricks running on top of WSL, it's the same. It won't change between WSL 1 and 2.
To clarify, like WSL 1, like when we don't mention the number, it means it's the one. So that's the one that everybody has access today. WSL 2 is coming, should be delivered very soon on the next update. Probably some people already have it because they are running the insider version of Windows, but also I know the update is rolling out right now, but not everybody have it right now. So that's why we decided to go with one. Correct, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, partly because not everyone has it, and partly because it just didn't matter for the demos I'm showing today. Yeah, it's you'll be able to run the same exact things I'm going to show you on 1 and 2, the same features. Everything that happens in the 2 different versions is actually behind the scenes. They made some improvements in performance. It handles containers better and a few other things. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. So as I mentioned before, the Windows Terminal, you can get it through the Microsoft Store. I'll share a link later. Once you download it, it basically detects once you download things on your local machine and creates a settings file for you that you can customize. So I'm going to show you basically. So let's just dive in there. Let's see. Whoops.
Sorry for the feedback,
Ignore that.
everybody. For a few
Ignore
seconds,
that.
I switched tab and by accident Twitch start, so we had a little bit of echo.
Trying to find a window where I can see my icon. There. Okay, just a moment here. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to fire up the terminal. And then I'm going to delete all my settings. So I've got all these cool settings. Let me just open this in one window that you can see. So here's my PowerShell. And once again, it's nagging me to update my darn PowerShell. And then I've got a command window here. So all of these that you see here are actually running from the original application. So the command is running from command. The command for apps 11, it opens in a certain folder, and it's got a bigger font, and it's got a nice background like that. That's still running the same exact command window as running here. It's just all the settings for opacity and background GIF and default directory, those are all controlled by Windows Terminal. And I've got some other cool things here I can do. I can set up a cloud shell, which connects to the Azure Cloud Shell. I'll talk about that in a bit. I can set up, here's my Ubuntu. So it's actually, I've got Ubuntu 16 and 18 on here. And in 18, I've got some cool fonts set up. But what we're going to do for now is I'm actually going to go, everything's controlled by this settings file here. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to blow away this settings file. I have it backed up over here, don't worry. But I'm not crazy entirely. But what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to close that. I'm going to close my terminal. Close all.
So all those tabs that you open, like they were all different configuration, it's all in one file. That is the settings of the Windows terminal. Is it what you're saying?
That's correct. And
okay.
It's stored in a directory over here. And if I look at my settings directory, there it is. Oh, no, that's the DAT file. Sorry. Where is it? Darn it. I think it's in local state. Yeah, settings JSON right there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to delete this. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you download it from the, there you go, it's gone. All right, so I might have just destroyed my entire demonstration. We'll see.
This is how you know it's live, people.
It is live, folks. I'm adding all kinds of disclaimers here. So there you go. So what it does is there's no settings JSON file now.
Yeah, now we're back to the regular one we know.
Yeah, it just creates this really boring one. And you notice this little weird font here. That's because there's a certain font that I've set up in PowerShell that Hanselman, Scott Hanselman, which you guys might have heard of, he's got this great blog post. I'm going to take you through it in a little while to show you how to set these things up and some of the ways you can do it with the command line to make it easier. He sort of hand waves in a few spots in the blog post, and I will fill in those gaps. But anyway, what happened here is you'll see what it did. When the terminal opened, it scanned my machine, and it said, okay, Bri, I can see that you have Windows PowerShell installed, you have a command prompt installed, you have Ubuntu 16, you have 18, and you have an Azure Cloud Shell capability as well.
Okay,
so it automatically...
When OWL started, my experience could be different depending on what I have already configured or installed available on my machine.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. So it just detects all the things that can run in the terminal and puts them in here.
Pretty smart.
And I'm going to show you how you can customize these. So if I go into my settings JSON file now, so there it is. The settings JSON file is pretty basic. It's got these things called profiles. They're in a list. And each one has a GUID, and you can customize these GUIDs. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you can customize each one of these profiles, too, to do a whole bunch of things. If you look down here, and this is new. They used to have a bunch of color schemes they used to give you, and they don't anymore. Right there. Schemes gone. Thank you very much. So I'm not sure why, but they used to have a bunch of samples. Now they don't put them in there anymore. So basically, all I've got is basic, standard, command prompt, PowerShell. They all look the same. Ubuntu 16, blah, and Ubuntu 18, and this one's going to have a screwed up font again. I'm going to show you how to reset that. See that? The little squares there. I'm going to fix that in a bit. And then the Azure Cloud Shell. So let's go ahead and customize this now. We'll close these down. Great. So what I've got my backup settings here. And the first thing I want to do, and these are from the old, I've kept these from the old original settings. So there's a whole bunch of color schemes you can use. And I will. And I've got one custom color scheme called Fireplace in there. I'll show you what that is in a bit. So let's select these. Let's put these in here under schemes. All right. There. So we got some color schemes in there. Yay. Save that. Now, if you have any errors, if you've screwed anything up, the terminal will actually tell you when you start it. So you don't get an error here in your Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio Code to edit this, but I will get an error here. It's like I didn't screw it up yet, so that's good. It's still running. Everything's good. So we got our JSON file.
As soon as you save the Windows terminal, apply those changes right away. So if it cannot parse the JSON, it will throw an error.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace, here's my Windows PowerShell. I'm going to get onto my backup settings here. And the reason why I did the color settings first is because I refer to them in my old profiles. And if I add this to my profile as PowerShell, and I refer to this colors, it's going to have a problem. It'll give me an error message there. So let's go ahead and let's go to settings JSON, and let's just wipe out the PowerShell one. Actually, we'll leave that little command, a little comment there, because I think that's a good one. Oh, I think I screwed this up already. I did. Look at that. Can I control Z out of that? Yes, I can. Okay, what did I do? All right, I know what I did. Okay. I got the brackets twice. All right, so you just get rid of those. But actually, this is a good example. So if I save this and I try to go over here, it's going to tell me, yeah, there's something wrong with your JSON file. So let's go ahead and fix that. Okay.
And it says line 58 and everything.
That's where it is. So there we go. So I have my nice little Nicolas Cage cosmic display there, and I've actually got the right font now too. So let's talk about what I just did. Let's go into the settings file. So this has opacity. I changed the opacity a little bit. That wasn't there before. The background, I changed the background color. And then I have close on exit, and I'm going to show why that's significant in a bit as well. So basically what happens if you do Control-C and you close this command line, it will close the entire tab.
So you have IntelliSense, because right now when you mouse over like background images or like stuff like that, you have... So like let's say I'm starting a new team, I don't have a backup of something existent. If I do comma and I start on a new line, do I have like options? Do I know what's possible?
Yes. You can, I think with IntelliSense, for example...
If you just started on a new line and you open the double quote, do you have like options?
Yeah. For example, if I get rid of the font face and I just say... So it does actually tell you what the font face is. Is that what you're asking? Or?
Yes.
And it gives you a default, yeah. And then you can actually change it to whatever you want it to be. In this case, Cascaded Code L, which is a new font you can use. Okay. So that's the kind of thing you can do.
I asked that because, you know, when like it's nice when someone knows what they are doing and like, okay, I want this, but like, let's say I'm starting fresh and like, I would like to have like I don't know, transparency. I want to put the change my background, and like I don't know what's the name of that property. So like with IntelliSense now, it's much easier.
Absolutely. So if you notice, I typed FO on the previous line and it brought up font face.
Yeah.
And then because I'm on the next line, I typed FO and it brought up font size because it knows that's the next thing you should really specify. But these don't actually need to be in order. That's just the suggested order. And then the GUID. The GUID's interesting. So the GUID, it has to follow a certain format. I think that's in the IntelliSense here. Let me see. Yeah, there you go. As long as you follow this format, it can change. You can change it to whatever you want. So you can change this to FB, and it still doesn't give me an error. It still works. And that's important because if you're copying and pasting, like I do a lot, from one profile, you just want to change it a little bit, then that's how you do it. So the icon is actually using the standard Microsoft icons, but I'm going to show you how you set up your own icon a little bit later. And then the images. So the images are actually in a directory called roaming state.
Oh, you put
So
it
the
there.
images,
Okay.
yeah, so there's all kinds of images here. And what you can do,
Oh, that little
another,
cat. Remember something.
what's that?
The little cat.
Yes, I borrowed that from you when I saw it. I went out and grabbed it from one of the gift sites after I saw it from you. This is one of my favorites, the umbrella loose. So let's do that one. So let's just change this to umbrella loose.
Umbrella loose.
Blah, 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 blah. This one. So instead of Nicolas Cage, we'll change this to umbrella loosely coupled. Yeah. And you'll see once again, it changes it. Oops, it does change it immediately. Darn it, doesn't it? PowerShell. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's kind of, the sizing is not quite right. Yeah, that's not good. It's pretty funny. When it pushes the button, the thing pops off, but it falls on the floor and opens. It's like, anyway. Yeah, anyway. That's what happens. But, didn't happen here. But,
Whoops. I think we're losing you, Brian. Look like we're having a little bit connectivity issue, but partially, just slow. Sure, we'll get back in a few seconds. Are you back, Brian? Can I change something? I should have some dad jokes when those things happens. In the chat, do you see, is it only me? Or you see, like, do you see Brian's on regular speeds or you see him lagging also? Like, I think everybody should see him lagging. Let me know if it's fine for you. Otherwise, I will continue. Not working? Okay, thank you, Cobra. Brian. Try to ping him. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Oh. Hello?
Hey there, is that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. But anyway, you have Cloud Shell.
Whew, now
You can hear me again?
yes,
All
yes,
right,
no, it's all fine. You get me sweating now. That's it.
Sorry.
No, it's fine, totally fine. Yeah, I'll let your camera is super tiny also.
It's fine.
I will
It's
fix
fine.
that.
It's fine. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. The internet, the
Oh,
interwebs.
like more live. No problem. No, no guilt. I'm
So
not
what
looking
I
for a guilty person here. That's all good.
Sure. So what I did is I showed the Cloud Shell in the terminal, and I also showed it on the local browser. But I'm going to show some cool things about that later. I just wanted to show that it's there and we're looking at the front of it. So the next thing I want to show is all my different options for Ubuntu. So I've got Ubuntu 16 here.
Yes.
And I've got this with my GIF, so I know I'm in Ubuntu. And then I've got Ubuntu 18, which has some cool fonts set up. And we'll get to that in a bit too. But before I get to that, I've also customized the command inside of Ubuntu for a couple of things. The exact same one I have here, but this one's a fireplace. This one's for Ignite, so it automatically defaults to a default directory, and it has the font a little bit bigger because when I'm at a in-person conference, remember those?
Back in the days.
Back in the olden days, I have to be on a larger font. So let's go ahead and look at those. So basically what I've got here, if I go up there to the Ignite one, there we go. So Ubuntu 16.04 is there. We have something called Fireplace. I'll get to in a second. We have something there. It is Ubuntu 16.04 for Ignite. You put the starting directory in there. And then you put the font face, Cascadia code, and the font size. And you just specify what it's going to be. And then the nice thing about that is, it defaults to that versus this or this. So you can kind of tell where you are, and also it's just handy for me, for example, when I'm doing presentations, I'm right in the directory I need to be inside of Terminal. I didn't have to change anything. I didn't have to go into File Explorer or anything like that. I just open everything up where I need to be, and I can actually run stuff from here. Now, taking that even further, let me close those down. I can do something like Fireplace. So Fireplace is this little application called AA Fire. You do apt-get in Linux, and you can get this little application, but it's all character-based. So the other thing I want to show you is you can resize the font just with your Control plus and minus, or in the case of Windows, Command plus and minus, and that's kind of cool. And you can also control the colors and things. So if we go into the setting I have for that, let's see here, Star Wars. Star Wars is a cool one too. I'm going to get that in a second. Here it is. So here's the Fireplace, and I used the color scheme Fireplace. Remember, I had to download, I had to copy in the Fireplace color scheme before I set this up. Otherwise, I get an error because I can't find it. But the command line is the interesting part. So what I say is WSL-EXE, and then the distribution I want to use, Ubuntu 16.04, and I want to call AA Fire when it starts up. So that's how you do that. Another cool one is the Star Wars one. The Star Wars one actually calls a shell script. This is Ignite.
So you could do what,
Star
like
Wars.
you could do everything you want. Like you could
Yes.
start in the folder you want with the font size you like
Yeah.
have already like a program, like some parameter that you set up
Mhm.
when you start, and everything just like boom, you open your window and like you're already all kind of set up. This is super cool.
Yeah, look at this one. So this is WSLEX. You use a distribution, and then you have a shell script that you run. And let's have a look at that shell script. So the shell script itself actually it calls a website telnet, and this is really cool. You're gonna love this. But I always forget what the telnet thing is to disconnect. So it's control and then right bracket, and then so I put a reminder in there for myself, and I stop for 2 seconds,
Good idea.
and then I telnet into this website. So let's actually do that because this is a lot of fun. So the fireplace thing's kind of cool. Yep. But this is the cool one for me. I love this. Somebody, not because of the site itself, but because somebody went to all this trouble. And you'll see what it is in a second. Let me make this a little smaller. Bum, 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 bum. It doesn't have the music, which I wish it did. But I'm giving away too much here. It's taking a second. All right, there we go.
Present.
Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, like
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Awesome.
It is somebody took the time to create a telnet ASCII version of Star Wars. And it's not just the text. You'll see that it's amazing. Anyway, this is worth a minute to watch. You'll see in a sec here. It has the full text. I don't know if we're breaking any copyright laws right now. We're not. The guys who wrote this are. I just telnet it in. I don't know what the exact rules are there. But there's the actual. It has the whole thing. I mean, it has the whole script. It has the characters. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, RTD2 and C3PO.
It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, I get the right
Awesome.
side. Anyway, so this will actually just run for I think an hour and a
Do you
half.
have the links of that? Because of course, right now with the
Yes.
delay, it's lagging a little bit when we stream it. But like, if people want to go and check that, that's cool.
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, at the end of this, I'm gonna show GitHub, which has the scripts in it and everything. But basically, it's just this. So just to recap here,
That's the
uh,
princess.
what I do is, in the settings,
Oh, and I
I
need to stop you, Brian, because we are getting raid.
you're getting
Layla
what?
Codit is raiding us with a party of 28.
Wow. Okay.
So welcome, raiders. Welcome. Today
Welcome.
we are with Brian Benz, who's giving us tons of tips and tricks for the command line for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Of course, Windows.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were watching Telnet stream of Star Wars in text.
Yeah. Here it is. This is actually Star Wars connected to Telnet. So I'll recap how I did this.
Yeah, let's take 2 seconds for the newcomers. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it from the top. So what I'm doing, I'm in, what this is Windows Terminal. And inside of Windows Terminal, you can call different windows. And I've customized these. And one of them I've got is called Ubuntu 16.04 for Star Wars. And how that works is if I go into the settings JSON file, which is what controls these profiles, the command I have for this is WSLEXE, so it's calling my Windows subsystem for Linux. So it's running Linux on top of Windows. It's using Ubuntu 16.04 as the distribution. And then it's calling a shell script called demo1 shell. So anytime I fire that terminal up here, so I just go in here and I select my Star Wars terminal, a new tab opens and it starts playing Star Wars. Inside of there, I call that shell script, what it's doing is it's reminding me of how I disconnect from Telnet. And then it's going into Telnet, into tal.blinkenlights.nl, and it's actually playing the entire Star Wars in ASCII. I believe it was episode 4. But yeah, it's playing the whole thing right here.
Episode 4 or
it's kind
1,
of cool.
depending on how old you are.
Yeah, so basically, the reason why I show this is because it shows you you can call a new tab with an existing terminal, in this case, Windows Subsystem for Linux, and you can run a shell script that does pretty much anything. Maybe it connects to a VM, maybe it runs a cleanup that you need to run, or something like that. So you can just create a new tab that does that. And I'm actually going to go a little further, huh?
Brian, just because in the chat, some people said that the name, the subsystem for Linux doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So could you, there's a reason for that. Brian mentioned it at the beginning, so maybe we could specify that, and then we'll continue.
Absolutely. So real quick, just to recap, I'll put it on Star Wars while I'm telling this tale. So basically, Windows Subsystem for Linux, why isn't it just called Linux for Windows or something more descriptive? That's because the original command prompt, the original console, was called Windows Subsystem. And so when they created the Linux version of it, they just called it Windows Subsystem for Linux. So that's why it's called WSL. Yeah. But I'm not saying that's the right name, but that's historically
explaining the story about it.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, Windows Subsystem for Linux. That's why it's called that. So anyway, one thing I wanted to show you. So I've shown a couple things for those of you who just arrived. So I showed how you can set up your Windows PowerShell to have Nicolas Cage doing some cosmic stuff, and then my basic command window. And then I have a Cloud Shell, which at the time I did that, it froze up the machine for some reason. The fireplace, which is kind of cool. And you can do things like make it different sizes. And that's just another command that you use for the command line. What I want to show you now, I'm actually going to add a totally new application. So I want to run a Hugo on my local machine. I have Hugo on my local machine. I can run it. I go to CD Hugo, CD brianbenz.com, and then CD sites, and then brianbenz.com, and I type Hugo server D. But wouldn't it be nice if I could just drop down a tab that did all that for me here? So I'm going to show you how to actually do that. And this is just an example of how to customize your Windows terminal. So for those of you who just arrived, the Windows terminal you get from the Microsoft Store. I'll show a link later. And when you download it, it only runs on Windows because it's the terminal for Microsoft. But it runs as basically a screen on front of all the other applications that are already running on your machine. PowerShell, Windows Azure Shell, Azure Shell. It used to be called Windows Azure. The Windows Subsystem for Linux, and a couple other things, command prompt. So let me show you how I can set up Hugo from scratch. Let's go in here. So I'm going to take my command.
Welcome, Jean Valjean and his party of 3 rating again.
Wow.
Having a lot of visitors today. That's cool. Awesome. Welcome to the stream. Having some tips and tricks with Brian Benz.
Thanks for stopping by. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to borrow this. Which one should I do? I don't know. Yeah, let's do this one. I'm going to copy not the Cloud Shell. I don't want the Cloud Shell. Let's just do Command EXE. All right. So I'm going to copy this. This is how I do this. I hardly ever type anything from scratch. What the heck? And then I'm going to do Hugo but I want to set up my local. Has the starting directory has to be, and I've got it here, so I'm going to cheat on this one because you have to resize these things. So it's a little bit confusing because when you set it up, even though you're using the command prompt, you have to use the / instead of the backslash. So it's going to be the starting directory of chugo_sites.brianbenz.com. And I want to say Hugo Server D for this. I think that's okay. Now, what I have to do, because I copied this profile, I have to change this.
The unique identifier must be unique, so you need to change it to make it unique again.
And it has to format, it has to match that pattern. So look at that, it doesn't match the pattern. Okay, so what did I do? So that maybe it's going to give me, nope.
And that's why I have an extension in my Visual Studio Code where I do new GUID.
Yeah, that is too easy.
Well, you know.
I broke it. Hold on.
While Brian is fixing his GUID, how was your stream, Jean Valjean? And Layla, you say your stream was painful. How come? Layla was doing part of the, not animation, but it was the live coder stream this weekend, Saturday. And she was between the talks. She was doing some kind of the animation over there, like, presenting the next speakers and stuff like that.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. I think I got this. So let's start at the terminal. Fingers crossed. Let's go to terminal. Just a moment. What's going on? I need to get back to a window where I can see something. Come on. Where's my, because it's just so you guys know, sort of inside baseball here. I am using, I have to go over here. You know what I have to do? I have to pull this over here. Now I can see my icons. I can't see the icons on this screen. Anyway, I won't belabor that too much because it's kind of boring. But now I can see my terminal icon. And it starts up. There we go. Okay, so we didn't get an error. That's good. So I didn't screw anything up. But let's see if the actual platform works. Oh, because I didn't change the name. Just hold on. Folks, so I still called it apps 11. We want Hugo Server.
Don't forget we have a delay, Brian. When you switch super fast from one screen to the other, it's hard for us to follow. Okay, so now you change the name, so in the drop down it will show as
Hugo Server. So fingers crossed. Let's see if it actually runs. Boom, boom, boom. New terminal. There we go. Is it going to run? Building sites. Yes, it's working. Oh boy, it's slow though. There we go. So, for those of you who might not be familiar with Hugo Server,
it's a huge font.
I'm just down. I had a default too. I have to change that default font. But basically, what it does, I have a website called brianbenz.com, and I've got I can test it on my local machine using a localhost 1313. So let's go here. But I have to start that command first. So localhost. There we go. So Brian's blog. There we go. So now I can test my local blog before I publish it. And by the way, just this is in real time. Just as I started this stream, I got my confirmation that I'm a Java champion, which I knew was going to happen today. So I need to publish this blog right after I get off the stream. So this one isn't actually on my blog at brianbenz.com. This is just here. So the cool thing is now I can test this out, and I can read this, and I can see if I like it, and then I can actually deploy this. But this is all enabled by the new profile that I just set up here. Now, if I hit Control-C, it actually closes that tab, right? So there's two more things I want to do to customize this profile. First of all, I want to change the font. I want to change the font to something else. So I'm going to take this user profile.
So just slow down, Brian, because for us
Okay.
it's really hard. I don't know, like at least now you're still like we can hear you and everything, but
Oh,
there's still a little bit delay. So sometime when we hear you, like you're not yet on the screen.
okay. Sorry, folks.
No, it's okay. But and I know you're trying to catch up because you have so much stuff to show us. But we have like we're pretty good in time, so we are just about to have an hour, so we have plenty of time. So
Okay,
now you're
cool.
back in Visual Studio in the setting file, and you
Yeah.
look at the setting for the new tab you just created, and we want to change the font size. You said.
We're going to change the font size. We're going to change something else. And we're actually going to change the icon. So I'm changing the icon first,
Okay.
just because why not?
Yeah. Okay. So on line 112, that's the icon property. Now you're changing it for something else. Okay.
Yeah. So if I look on my file system here, you'll see I have something called bit.ico. These are all my GIFs. They're in my roaming state for this particular terminal. The bit.ico is the one I want to use. So if I go back here, and I just change this to bit.
You decided to put it there, but I know in my machine, like I have a specific folder with a short path that I like. We don't need to use the app data folder, right? Or the roamings thing.
Absolutely not. No, I just like to use it because it's like everything in one place, so I know where everything is related to my terminal. So then the other thing I want to do is I want to change this font from 26 to 11. And I'm going to change one thing up here, close on exit. If you notice when I hit Control C, it shut down the Hugo server and closed the tab, but I don't necessarily want to do that. Maybe I just want to leave it there. When I hit Control C, maybe I want to leave that window, the tab open, but just have it stop running the Hugo server. So let's do that. We save that. So this is actually all in there now. Let's try the same Hugo server. Let's see what happens now. So it should do 11. Yeah, there we go. So now it's running like that. And if you notice up here, the icon is my little bit icon. Interestingly, when I go into settings here, if you notice, I didn't call cmd.exe. It defaults to cmd.exe. If you go up here to the other profile, the command window, it just defaults to that. But I just have to call Hugo server D for the command line, and it knows that I'm using cmd.exe because that's the default in Windows. If I wanted to call WSL or something and run the shell script, then that would be like the Star Wars one that I showed you earlier.
Okay.
Running, so now I can actually go and, once again, check out my blog, make sure it's still there. Yeah, it's still there, ready to be published. Great. Now if I hit Control C.
So that's like now what we see. Whoa. What we briefly see was the website generated by the Hugo server.
Sorry about the lag. Yeah. So this is the this is the website generated by the server. Correct.
I know Brian won't say it. He's running on a very old machine that like it. So he's doing his best. We're asking a lot to the poor machine.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So yeah, people mentioned like you were surprised that Hugo was lagging. Like it's different. Like we're asking a lot right now to the machine, and plus we had like a little bit of connectivity issue earlier, so that's why it's lagging a little bit.
I don't think it's the machine that's lagging. I think it's just the transmission. So this is running locally. For me, locally here, it fired up real quick. It's just taking a second, I think, to transition. I don't know.
We definitely have a delay on like your voice and your screen. That's for sure. Like maybe like a second, maybe close to even 2 sometime.
Okay, so I'll slow it down even more. Sorry about that. So I closed the. So now I'm showing the Hugo server tab and terminal, and I hit Control C to stop. But because I changed the close on exit to false, now it keeps the window open, but it has in fact shut down the Hugo server. So if I go back to the browser and hit that to refresh, it's no longer there. So that's it. What I wanted to show you. But the tab is still open. That's the kind of nice thing. And then from here, what I can do is, well, I can't do much from here, actually. I have to close the window anyway. But it's just kind of handy because sometimes you might have times when you want to get out of something you're running, like a shell script. You hit Control-C, and then you get back to the command and continue in the same terminal window in the same directory.
Well,
So
I like that. I never thought about setting my environment right away in the terminal. For me, could be a time saver where I know I'm building that thing already, so I could just say, I opening the terminal and just like boom, know everything I need to go, and I'm
exactly.
ready.
It's like, okay, I want to try out my blog. There we go. Fire it up. So it's running. So now I can go back to my machine, back to this, refresh it, and oh, it's already there. There you go. So yeah, it's kind of nice. There are a lot of things you might not think of you can use for the terminal, like things like that. Like you want to run something locally, like Jenkins or something like that, you can just set up a terminal and you can run it everything in the command line rather than having to go, oh gosh, what's that directory for again? Is it brianbenz.com or is it sites.brianbenz.com? And is it Hugo server? How do you do drafts again? Is it minus? You don't have to remember any of that. You just, go in and hit your Hugo server and fire it up through the terminal. So that's kind of nice.
Definitely.
I think. All right, so that's pretty much what I wanted to show with the terminal. I showed you, for those of you who came late, what I did is I actually wiped out my settings.json file, and it automatically detected everything that I had on my machine in the working terminal once I started it again. And in this case, I had a command, PowerShell, Cloud Shell, and Ubuntu 16 and Ubuntu 18. And then I went in and I customized all my profiles based on some settings that I already had. And then I created a totally new Hugo server with a new icon and new directory and everything like that, and showed you how to fire that up and what that close on exit settings has in the JSON file as well. So hopefully that was useful.
We still have time for the fount with the ligature?
Oh, no, I got tons of stuff. Yeah, no,
Okay,
I still have a lot of material. So how are we doing for time? I've got this.
We're still we're about 25 minutes. Still have 25
great.
minutes.
Awesome. Okay, great. So the next thing I want to show you is Cloud Shell. Let's go into Cloud Shell. So I can start Cloud Shell from the terminal, but I'm just going to close it for now because I think the bandwidth is a little bit affected when I run it a couple of times in terminal and a local machine, plus I'm broadcasting. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to Shell, Azure, and this should fire up relatively quickly and hopefully not freeze. You guys can still hear me, I hope.
We can still hear you.
Yay, okay. This will take a second. What I want to show you from here is how you can actually edit things in your Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell itself, shell.azure.com, you have to have an Azure subscription. But once you go in there and once you've authenticated, it actually gives you an environment that you can use to interact with your Azure subscription. And that includes Bash, Cloud Shell. Come on, what's going on here? Maybe because I have it open here too, Bri. Let's do this. Let's clean it, clean from the start. I didn't notice that I had a shell already open over on the left, so it'll open another one, but it kind of slows down a lot. Really only intended to have one shell open at a time. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, you're still there.
Okay.
You are moving. We're seeing of course the Cloud Shell right now is just a black screen.
Yeah, it's not coming up yet.
So the Cloud Shell, we can access it also when we are in the Azure portal, right? So if you do portal.azure.com, you have a little
Yeah.
icon in the top right corner. You can have just like kind of
Yes.
a bottom of the screen, but if you want like the a full screen experience, you could go
Yeah.
at shell.azure.com, and now we have that. And usually, like
Correct.
it open in a snap, right? It's
Yeah,
probably
usually it opens really quickly. I'm not sure what's going on right now. I think it's because I had it open in several different places. So what it does, okay, good, it's getting there. It uses something called Azure Container Instances behind the scenes, which is basically this massive organization of Kubernetes clusters that we manage. And each time you use the Cloud Shell, it goes out to Azure Container Instances and grabs a pod and brings it down and creates a container that is using some storage that you already have dedicated for your use on Azure. And hopefully I can show you that in a second. It does use, you can use Bash or PowerShell. Boy, it's taking a while. Not sure why. It usually
let
fires up in a second
maybe
or
we
two.
should leave it
Yeah,
load and continue on something else and come back to it
yeah.
when it's fully loaded.
We're back. We're here. We're here. So I can do Bash or PowerShell. Okay. But the reason I wanted to show you this, and let me get to a reasonable size. So that one of the reasons I want to show you this is I can do ls, and I have some storage here already. You see, I went out to GitHub and I've actually cloned a few things here. I mentioned before you have storage on Azure. There's actually a storage account associated with the Cloud Shell. So that's why this took so long to fire up, because I was using it in terminal and in another window. And if you start using it in different places, there's contention with your cache. So there's a cached a storage that you have that has everything in it. Now, I can go here and I can start playing around with some of these containers, sorry, some of these
Files.
repos that I have set up here, my local Git clones. But I can also do this code, and it creates a basic version of Azure Studio or Visual Studio Code, and I can edit things like Markdown files, and it actually has color coding and a few other things. There's a YAML file here, so you can actually go in and you can play around with stuff. Let's see. Here's a Hello World Python that I wrote. It's got a Docker file. It's got a few other things. But I can edit all of this, and it knows about basic files and structures and things like that, which is kind of cool. I think it even does Python. Let's see.
And I only learned that when you showed me the first time, because I was still using Pico as a text editor, and like Visual Studio Code will be so much better.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then you can do down at the bottom here, if you notice, the command line, when I change directories, is actually moving the directory for me. So it's kind of nice. And then I can type commands down here. So I can do that in Bash or
Oh,
PowerShell, depending on what you like. And I can edit these files, and I can save them just using Control-S the way I would normally. Now, it doesn't support any of the regular Visual Studio Code extensions or anything like that, but it's really, really handy for just editing
it
files.
is really handy.
Yeah. So this is actually a way that I interact with things when I'm out on the road. I remember being on the road, and I'm doing presentations. I find the easiest way to do it in a lot of cases is to go to shell.azure.com, clone your repo, and you can actually run things here. For example, if you have a container, a lot of things are preloaded here. So Docker.
I know Jay is using it heavily. Jessica Dean is also like using a bunch of stuff over there. Like they work half their time in there. They customize it and everything. It's very convenient
Yeah.
because
So
wherever
basically,
you are, you have your files, right? As long as you have
yes.
internet.
And you have most of the common things you work with. So I showed Docker, I showed Terraform, Kube, Kube control, cool as well. So you get the idea here. You've got a whole bunch of things you can work with, and then you can do things like, run your code, actually deploy to an Azure container registry, and then compile your code on the registry and deploy it to an Azure Kubernetes cluster or something like that, or just regular code. You can deploy it. You can use an SCP from here to a VM, and then from there you can load some code, do an apt-get, run some code from here to your VM, and configure everything there without actually having anything on your local machine. So you could do this if you wanted to log in with your Azure subscription from the dodgy hotel computer, that kind of thing. So the Internet Cafe, I know there's still some out there. You can do that from there. So you get the idea. It's kind of cool. You can do a lot of things with this. You can do it in Bash or PowerShell. And there's a bunch of settings you can do as well. But for now, I just wanted to show you that on top of that. Oh, last but not least, I want to show you one thing. This is not last demo, just the last thing for this part. So the Azure CLI, the AZ CLI is what I'm going to talk about next. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's go back to the presentation. All right, so the Azure CLI is consistent with Linux, so you can include it in your shell scripts. Oh, I guess I should back up and say, what is it? The Azure CLI is a way of manipulating resources in Azure. So if you want to create a VM, AZ VM create. If you want to create a Kubernetes cluster, AZ AKS. You get the idea. So there's a whole bunch of different commands you use from the command line to work with Azure resources. They can be embedded in your shell scripts. It's consistent with Linux. It integrates with JSON, grep, AWK, JQ. It has tab completion, all the things you'd expect. It's written in Python, and it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it is on GitHub, and it's open source on GitHub. So if there's something you don't like in there, or there's some characters or a language that is not supported, you can go in and you can actually customize this the way you'd like it.
And they accept PRs.
Yes, they do. They accept PRs. I'll show you the link a bit later on the whole, on this and a bunch of other things as well. But yes, it's out on GitHub. It's a regular GitHub project. And I think they have, quarterly or less releases. And it's a pretty cool tool. You do have to install. It comes pre-installed in the Cloud Shell. For Windows and Linux, you have to install it. There are documentation out there. If you just search on Azure CLI install, you'll find all the resources you need to actually install this.
We have a question from Silicon Orchid, who's asking, I heard Azure Portal use the CLI behind the sign. Is that accurate?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think it's using APIs. Because at the end, everything is using the APIs.
Yeah, it uses APIs, and it does use ARM templates as well.
Yes.
And one of the cool things when you create a resource, like if you create a VM, you set it up the way you want, there is an option to save the CLI that will create that later. But I don't think they're using it directly. I mean, I don't think that every command that you create, like when you click on VM in the marketplace, I don't think it runs the AZ VM create behind the scenes. I think there's some other things that actually happen there to allocate that.
It's probably more APIs and JSON document. Because if you want consistency between all the, because like you can create stuff by PowerShell, you could create stuff with CLI, with the portal, with the APIs. So if you want consistency, everyone should use the same. And at the end, I think it's APIs that run. But the result will be the same. So if you're using the portal, you should be able to arrive at the same result as if you're running the command prompt, so the CLI or PowerShell, depending on what you prefer. I hope it answered your question, Silicon Orchid.
For those of you who came late, I'm turning my head when I look over here. I actually have I have actually the chat on a different window, so I'm reading it over there. So that's why. I am paying attention. Okay. So, all right. So last thing I want to show you is some cool things with VS Code. So I showed you when I'm editing my settings JSON file here, this is actually VS Code. So this is Visual Studio Code. It's an open source text editor. You can download it. Just search on Visual Studio Code and you'll find that. It runs as well on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it is an open source project, which is on GitHub. I'll send a link to that later. So what I want to show you here, so this is the JSON file. I can do a control backtick from here, and it actually opens a prompt for me. All right, in this case, I got a command prompt, but I can select a default shell. So I can do a command prompt. I can do PowerShell. I can do WSL bash, or I can do git bash from here by default. So any one of those I can open, and I've actually got this set up. This is kind of cool. I've got this set up so that I can put my text on a line. I can take Control-Shift-Z, and it actually, it's not going to work right now, but it actually posts it from my local machine into there. There's one other option you have as well, which is kind of cool. So aside from command prompt, Windows shell, WSL bash, or git bash, if I do Control-Shift-P, I can, where is it? Open bash in Cloud Shell. So the next time I close this, it's actually going to open. Right? Yes, so it's actually going to open. There it is. So it's actually opened this in Cloud Shell now. So this is all the stuff that I just showed you earlier from shell.azure.com. And the cool thing about this, and the thing I always blows my mind, is when I hit Control-Shift-Z, it actually posts this out to the cloud. So I can run something from here. I can run an AZ CLI command. And if I have it up here in my window in the top, let's see here. Actually, I forgot. We should check in with the Star Wars. Oh, no, I closed Star Wars. Sorry. But let's see if this works. If I do the demo shell from here, I don't know if this is going to work, folks. I'm just trying it out. Why not? I should show you.
Actually, what could happen wrong?
Bad demo, Bri. So I did want to show you this. So I'm in this thing, and I've got my. So if I hit Control-Shift-Z, it actually opens it there. So Telnet does not work from the shell. Okay. Well, whatever, I tried. It doesn't work from the bash shell.
Well, I'm sure there's a way. Maybe it's not installed by default, or maybe like it's on purpose.
Yeah, I think it's on purpose. You're really asking a lot.
Yeah, there's a few things for security purposes, of course, that are closed.
And remember before in the Cloud Shell, shell.azure.com, when I type code, well, I'm in code, and I can't do it here. That's one thing. I mean, I've tried. Wouldn't that be nice if you could open? Well, it'd be weird, but you could open code inside of the Cloud Shell, but you can't. You can go to shell.azure.com. You can run code from there, but you can't do it from here. So anyway, okay. So a couple more things to show. We have 10 minutes. So that's opening bash in Cloud Shell. So I'm opening there. Or I can select the default shell again. Let's set this back to the command prompt. There we go. And let's trash that. Because the next thing I want to show you is remote connection. And once again, if I'm in the Cloud Shell and I'm doing a remote connection, it slows down. What is remote connection? Well, I install an extension in my Visual Studio Code called Remote Connection. Now, when I click on this little thing on the bottom left, I don't know if you can see it on the screen there. Hold on, let me move this up. Can you see it on the screen there, actually? Nah, probably not. But that's there.
No, we don't see the bottom of your screen. Yeah. Now we see it. Whoop.
Okay, now you see it. Good. So on the bottom left, there's a thing that says Open Remote Window. Okay, so when I click that, I have several options. Remote WSL, I have Remote SSH, and I have remote containers. So and I have code spaces. So Visual Studio Code space is a new way to actually edit code online and connect. You can use either a browser or you can connect directly through Visual Studio Code as well. For now, I'm not going to show containers and I'm not going to show code space. Containers basically is cool. It opens up inside a container, and you can manipulate the container. But I am going to show you two things today that I've got set up, which is remote SSH. So I'm going to connect to a virtual machine. I'll just connect to this one. I've got SSH set up. There we go. There we are. Oops, it's up here. You'll have to bear with me a little bit. So if I have to type my SSH password here. So word 1 2 3. Yeah. Okay. I'm kidding. All right. So so what it's done is opening a remote, and it's actually it's activating some extensions.
So I just hide my picture, so now we can see the SSH. So now we see that
Cool.
it's connecting through SSH to that IP 100 blah 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 blah, and now you are
Correct.
inside that VM, but
yeah, I'm
VS Code. Okay.
Yes, it actually created a new instance of VS Code on top of my other one. So if you look here, there's the screen I was looking at before. This one, and look at that, it's like gone off the screen, which is really annoying. I can't pull it down. But anyway, I can still show you this. This is inside of the, and it does the, oops. It does the autocomplete and everything. And I can do basic things in here. Let's see. Anyway, I can edit files in here, and I can do all kinds of stuff that's kind of cool. I don't have to start Vi and edit these things. I can edit them directly from here. So let's see if I can find one. Extend. I had one ready, and I don't see it now. Darn it. But I had a YAML file, so I was gonna open the YAML file and show it to you. Notice that now when I go to select default shell, there's different options. So there's a shell, there's bash, there's rbash, dash, tmux, and screen. So I no longer have command prompt WSL because I'm no longer in my local machine. I'm connected to this VM. But I can do things like apt-get, and it's going to be on this local machine, and then I can edit a file. I can do a WinSCP, or sorry, not WinSCP, it's SCP, secure copy, and copy things from anywhere into here. All kinds of things I can do. So it's kind of cool. Let me disconnect from this one. Close the remote connection. All right. Actually, yeah, I can close this from here. So let's just close it. There we go. So the next thing I want to show you is remote WSL. What the heck is that? So SSH is pretty straightforward, right? Command line and containers, straightforward. But what is remote WSL? That's actually connecting into your WSL. So let's go ahead and I'll show you a practical example of when you might use that. Let me just close that demo file, don't save it. All right, so I mentioned before that Scott Hanselman had this cool thing. Let me start my terminal. Do I have it running? I do not. Okay.
You have about 4 minutes, Brian.
Oh, do I? Okay, never mind. No, but I do have a couple things I want to show you. Okay, I can't believe we're running out of time. I thought I wouldn't have enough stuff.
Told you so.
Anyway, so Scott Hanselman has a blog. Where are my links?
Oh, you have a lot of stuff, but yes. Blog is one of the things.
Open. Okay. So Hanselman has this thing about how to create pretty prompts in Windows Terminal and how to set these things up. And one of the steps, I won't belabor it too much, but basically it's a kind of a cool way that you can create, instead of, I'm opening the terminal now. instead of the terminal, instead of having this kind of boring display, right, you can have this kind of cool display in your fonts for your terminal. So how do you set that up? Okay. So I won't go into, because we only have 4 minutes, but if you want to go through these steps, it's pretty cool. You get a kind of cool setup for yourself. But one of the steps he has is to edit your bash RC file, all right? And let's see if I can find that. Yeah, add this to your bash RC. So he just hand waves a little bit. Just go add that to your bash RC. So how do you do that? In Windows Subsystem for Linux, you go in and you edit your bash RC. It's here, but you can't see it because it's a hidden file. So let me show you how I can do this really easily using Visual Studio Code Remote WSL. WSL. Okay, I have to pull this over here. Never mind. Okay, so everyone sees that, right? So if I open a remote window and I say reopen remote WSL new window, what it's going to do is it's actually going to open up my settings inside of WSL. So I'm on my local machine, but what I'm doing is remoting into my WSL.
So in Linux.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm in Linux, yeah. So what it does is it actually dials in or connects to my WSL on the machine. And the advantage of that is starting code at WSL. How many minutes do we have? We're running out. Oh no, we got 1 minute.
Yeah, maybe, and like your PC is definitely having a hard time now. Like everything is just getting smaller. We barely see your stream. You want to share all the links you had for us, maybe?
Yeah. Let me do that. Let me put that in. Frank, I actually sent them to you. Did I? Can you put them in the chat? Is that possible? My machine seems to be freezing up a little. But yeah, let me do that. I put them in the Skype chat. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, yeah.
Are they there?
Yeah, they are there. They are all chunks.
If you don't mind, just post them in the chat.
I will. I have that.
Thank you, sir. I was hoping this was sort of. Come on. We're racing against time. I think we're out of time. But what I wanted to show you, what I was going to show you when this opened, it usually opens really quickly, is that you can go in and you can just edit that bash RC file using, oh, there we go. It's starting. Oh no. Do we still have like a minute? Are we over? Are we offline now? Or
I don't know even if we can go over, because I'm not sure if like if someone is after us and I don't want to overlap.
Okay.
So
It's starting. Anyway, what I was going to do is just show you how easy it is to edit the file without having to type vi or something, or, you know, there we go. Okay.
I will be on the next time. So I will go in the side-by-side view, Brian.
Sure, okay. All right, thanks.
I know. So thank you all for being with us with all the little glitch we had today. Like, you know, that's how you know we're live. Tomorrow we'll be back with Jason Han, who will show us how to build exception handling without code, and DevOps and teams and like bunch of stuff. Really cool demo that will show us. So it's a new show that we start, the Cloud Advocate, and it's called Azure, all around Azure, or that's at least the name we're giving it. So yeah, so thank you again, Brian, for being with us today. Very appreciated. I know we had a lot of content.
My pleasure.
And it was really fun. I hope everybody turbo button, exactly, though. So thank you again. See you on next time. Bye-bye.
It's yeah, the answer for the streaming, it was streaming versus the app. It doesn't take so long normally. So thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.